Hello, everyone. Welcome to NLP and Coronavirus Day 22. We're almost getting to the point where I'm running out of numbers. I won't be able to count anymore. I think it's 22. And again, I'm joined by a guest, a very dear friend of mine, Mark Layder, who will be new for many of you. So I just thought I'd, by way of an introduction, I'd kind of like tell you how I know Mark. And so Mark, we actually met nearly 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Because I joined the Center for Consultancy in, I think it was June 1990.
June 1990.
Yeah, 30 years. So as many of you know, I had a career in the city with Reuters Trading Room Systems. Then I decided I want to go out on my own, and I bought a franchise stroke license for an organization called the Center for Consultancy as a management consultant. But it's a very forward-looking organization because as part of the franchise package, then everybody was assigned an achievement coach. And in 1990, coaching was not like it is today. I mean, in 1990, you had a coach if you were a tennis player, and you had a coach when you went on holiday to Skegness. That was a coach. You didn't have a life coach or a business coach or any of those kind of things. So very forward-looking organization. So I had a coach, and as part of the training, as becoming a management consultant, I was introduced to this thing called NLP. Which is that was one of the big things that came out of joining the Center for Consultancy. But then, as a result of coaching, the organization had a sister company called the Center for Achievement, which just did achievement coaching. And Mark was the director of the Center for Achievement. So, because I got really turned on about NLP and got really turned on about coaching, then I started chatting to Mark about that, and eventually decided that what I wanted to do was to change my franchise, my license from Center for Consultancy over to the Center for Achievement. And
it's a big scandal that was in those days. Very big scandal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You changed sides.
So Mark really, introduced me to this whole thing called personal development. And I got the NLP stuff from the trainers at the Center for Consultancy, but then Mark introduced me to a number of people. Whose books he said, you need to read these books, you need to read these books. One was Stuart Wilde with his book, The Trick to Money is Having Some. And Stuart actually became not only a mentor, but quite a friend of mine in the early 90s. And Dan Milburn with the Way of the Peaceful Warrior. Interestingly, the second Dan Milburn book, which I think was The Sacred Path of the Peaceful Warrior.
That's the third one. The second one's No Ordinary Moments. The third one's The Sacred Path.
Is it? Okay. The Sacred Path, actually, though when I was reading it at the time, is a book about Huna. Which, now, as you know, I go out twice a year. I still think this is weird, Mark. How does a lad from Mansfield wind up going and teaching Huna in Hawaii twice a year?
Well, because people get connected and it leads to things. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mark has been, a huge catalyst for me in, where I am in my life today. I owe him a huge amount. For introducing me to the whole personal development and those kind of things, and so it's a great honor and a privilege to have him with me today on this live, and he's got some really valuable things he's going to share with you. And we we worked together in the early days of the quality of life seminars, which really got me into personal development seminars and training. But one of the things that he does now, which is and he's going to talk more about this, and I think this is, the coronavirus pandemic is becoming a little bit of a catalyst for this, if not an accelerator for this, is the new ways of doing business, because we're going to have to do business in different ways. And so one of the organizations that he runs now is called Biz Connectors. So Mark, welcome to this live video, this live interview.
Thank you for that, David.
What's your? I know that you've got some processes to share with our viewers, both on Facebook and on LinkedIn, on Reddit, and on YouTube. But what's your kind of like your take on where we are in the world today? Because it is, it's a big change, isn't it?
Huge, and it's getting called the Third World War, isn't it? But in an amazing way, this is a world war that we have to be all on the same side. It's a round world. You can't be on other sides really, but in the past. But if the upside of this whole thing is, because it's something every country pretty much is fighting in some way, and that puts us on the same side, and it puts other countries helping each other, and that whole talk each other up type language. And it just feels like the great generational wake-up call that says, everybody's talking about these collaborations and things that, the world is changing. Well, this is the wake-up call that says, if you do not now really start to understand what collaboration is, and look, taking the blinders off and looking this way, as well as just ahead, then the best that's going to happen is you're going to miss out. The worst is you will just be, we know people are dying as we're speaking. People are dying. So the upside of that, and the old line about when you're in a tunnel, there is a light at the other end. Just, we don't want it to be a train speeding towards us. In other words, there is a light. But that light does involve now really starting to embrace what it means about other people, because even this sort of global online community, the great moments of the clapping for the NHS on Thursday nights at 8 o'clock, and, maybe there is that little sort of reconnect on a local level now, because even when people are when we do our walks and our runs, and everybody's doing the big arch, so we can't, but people are saying hello more now than they used to. And so that there's already upside showing of that, but the opportunity to embrace that, if we just do that little shift, becomes huge. But at every new frontier, there's always casualties, and there's clearly, shockingly and very sadly, casualties. But let's focus on that light at the end of the tunnel.
So I know we were talking before we went live. And for those of you who watched all of these videos, the idea of first stabilize, ground, and grow, and also the fact, I've mentioned this a number of times. Although it's like it appears to be a linear process, stabilize, ground, and grow. It's not linear. It's a non-linear process. It's probably more like a spiral. In that, a number of people that I've been working with have got themselves stabilized, have got themselves into a good grounded position. They've started to take action to grow, and then something again that they just didn't see coming came in from the outside and put them back into needing to stabilize again. But I think, Mark, from what you were saying, there's some processes that people can do more in the ground and the grow phase that will assist them in changing their mindset. To see, using your analogy, the light at the end of the tunnel rather than light on the front of a train that's speeding towards them is going to take them out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So what can people do to make this shift? A lot of people say a pivot.
Let me just scene set that with a little quick lead-in story, and it's a true story, by the way. By the way, going back to your very kind introduction before, that for people that have known you for a long time, it's very humbling to hear that we're going to talk about that through us meeting all those years ago, and then that whole process that you just described to people, and some of them would already knew, has triggered this whole body of work and things that you've done now for 30 years that's also reaching other people. And that's a big theme that we're going to talk about. And it's this whole how interconnected we are. So it's lovely and humbling in that way, but also that's the process that we're talking about. So the little story that leads into it, it was several years ago, and a quite good friend, and we were just talking about something, and he got a phone call at late, 2 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And it was somebody he hadn't seen or been in contact with for something like 20 years from school. And what the guy was basically saying was, he wasn't going to make payroll. His company was in a problem, and could he borrow 20 grand or whatever it was? And the chap telling me the story said, he could have lent him the money, but he'd never had any contact with this guy since they'd been at school or whatever it was. So sort of there's the first mistake, if you want to call it that, of, staying in contact, but it's not the real point of the story. And so, the guy gets off the call, and he's telling me this, and he had the conversation with a group of buddies at the golf club or something, and it opened up a conversation as to, well, how many people would be on your list? How many people, if you had a real problem, could you call at 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever it is?
Right.
And it went round about 3 or 4 of them, and they all had 2 or 3 names. So it comes to my buddy, who in old terms is he's a brilliant influencer, and he's really people orientated, builds business, but very basic stuff that he does, but he's very people orientated. And it comes to him, and they said, well, he said 50 people, and they're like, what do you mean 50? And he said, no, I've thought about it. He said, it is 50. And the reason it's 50 is because I've helped so many people in the past that I know they would help me. Not just because they're wealthy or whatever it is, but it was that. And this is where I think our little tool of the handshake comes in. He's shaken hands with so many people in that sense of helping the other person, and it just led to a whole start of a thinking that said, here's the action for people that they can get started, and then we'll give them a way to develop this. Start your own list, because we don't think most people it's a big exercise, but if they literally, as we're talking now, start their list, who would you call? But the mindset shift is, how can you make that list bigger? And the message is going to be, the more people that you've helped. It's not people who will help you. So the kind of the real reorientation that comes out of this, and particularly given COVID and the situation we're in today, the action point that people can start to look at in this is to think about social media and rename it. Rename social media from this day on, rename social media. And if you want a new name for it, call it relational media. And we picked it up from somebody we were talking to, just something that they said. And what do you mean relational media? And he said, well, you can reach thousands and thousands and thousands of people today. But if you're smart, you will use it to find 10, 15, 20 small numbers of real quality relationships.
Right.
And they're the people that you can help, and you can help them. That's the two-way street of the handshake, as it were, in the sense. And that's the starting point of this. We've got, it's the other reason for this being here, we've got phrases for this on, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back, quid pro quo. This is old stuff. Actually, in most societies, they've got phrases for it. But that's the first switch really now, that think of that list, start that list, but then start adding to it based on remembering one thing. Everybody is in the people business. You can be in dentistry, you can be in all NLP, but if you're not focusing in on people, that's the only real asset you'll ever have, yourself and the relationships. So that's the first mindset shift, is build that list by realizing it's about quality of your connections or network or whatever people choose to call it, not quantity. And this now, COVID is giving us the time to, who are the people who you would be able to help or would help you? And it's almost a starting point for a completely new approach to doing your life. And underneath that, doing business.
Right. And the whole idea, I guess, of giving before you receive. Creating value for people, and value doesn't mean, giving them money or anything like that. It means, if somebody's in a bit of a tough place at the moment, and I don't think you're going to have much of a problem finding anybody that's in a tough place at the moment. It's just reaching out to them and going like, okay, is there anything I can do for you?
Right. Which is giving time, isn't it? And time is a much scarcer result. We've all got 24 hours, and at the moment we have got an abundance of time. What will you invest that time in that mindset to make sure it's a light at the end of the tunnel? Right.
So that's the first process, is to start building that list, and to, I guess, there might be some people that pop into your mind that you haven't been in contact with for a while, and it would be to reach out and go like, hey, you just popped into my mind, how are you doing?
Yeah. And wake up calls do that, Dave. You know a bit of the sad story of my wife lost her sister before all that. It's been an interesting time over 6 months. You lose your sister, they were very close. That, and certainly most of us Brits think, oh, sister, it's sad, but they were best friends as well as your sisters. Right. That, all that stuff that I know, but in that process of losing a sister as a wake-up call, then I'm sitting there and Ellen's in the hospital before sister, finally turned off the machines and all that horrible drama. And I'm just quietly sort of weeping for her, really. And I just reached out to a buddy from college that we have been friends for years, but we just went through a little tricky time, for a variety of reasons. And give him credit, he was here the next day, and Cody was even like, why haven't you seen Uncle Ian? And, you just start to look at, it was a small thing really, but he's been there since I was 18 years old, and we just lost track a little bit, as you do. And it was the wake-up call just to reach out, and they're the times, aren't they? So this is a global wake-up call. Reach out. And people, and give them that encouragement, because they'll reach back as well. It's amazing to see the willingness to give that is hardwired in all of us, pretty much.
Yeah, and then as we know from Cialdini's rules of influence, I think the first Cialdini rule of influence is the law or the rule of reciprocity.
Yeah, reciprocity.
But you're not going to get reciprocity until you've given something first. So we've got that hardwired thing to give to the people that we know and we care about, but then it's hardwired in for us to reciprocate. And that might not be tomorrow, it might not be next week, it might not be next year, it might be 10 years down the line. It's just not a linear process, is it?
No. It's the rules of the farm. You've got to plant today. It's the old Chinese proverb, isn't it, about the best day to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but if you still want a tree, it's today. So today's the only choice we've got. So whatever it is you want, start now. And if it's building powerful teams, strengthening relationships, that whole collaborative spirit, the doingness of it is reaching out and taking action. And you mentioned Covey, I think before, we talked about Stephen Covey, I think before the call. That's the emotional bank account, building that now. That old story that I mentioned, the guide before, there is an old line from it. It's the dig your well before you're thirsty. It's the prepare and invest now, not when you're up against it. And this is that funny, sad oasis that can have a very happy ending if we're smart.
Yep. Yeah. Cool. Did you have another thing for people to do besides the list?
Yeah, I sort of a more, whilst the list is really important because it's maybe more symbolic instead of an exercise. But the second one it's developed a bit of a fancy name now, and we call them referral partnerships. And it's a doing of that. Focus on small numbers, not big numbers. Focus on quality relationships, not big numbers. And that, that a lot of people have started saying, I've noticed recently on LinkedIn that still a little bit, I've got 15,000 contacts and the likes. Well, how many of them did you actually speak to in the last week? And you get down to an answer. Yeah, well, either nil, or there may be a pattern that people start to be aware of, and maybe there is a core 5, 10, 15, 20. Well, that's sort of the exercise that people can really think about, and it's got a metric on it as well, because if you were given choice between 20,000 followers or 5,000 on Facebook and 10,000 on Twitter and all that stuff, but then we don't really relationship build with them, as against 10 or 15 people that you get to know well, and that to make it a bit more businessy, they pass each other just one contact, not a customer, or you don't know things like that at the beginning of a relationship. When we meet long-term life partners, you meet and you have a cup of coffee, and you might not see them for 6 months, and then you bump into them again. But business wants to kind of wham bam, thank you ma'am, tomorrow. It takes a bit of time, so it's starting that process. So maybe some of the names are on that list we were talking about before, but the relational media real shift into a referral partnership says, well, think of 10 people, and we've tried this with 20, we've tried it with 5. The sweet spot is always the lower numbers, sort of maximum 12, 10, right. 11, 12. And have that little commitment, so it's not just something in the background, it's something of passing that one contact to each member of your group every week. And that contact, as per the old story of the rough diamonds, it's a diamond, but it may need polishing and developing and all of those kind of good things. But if you do that, and it's just for easy purposes, if there's you and 10 other people, so you get 10 sort of contacts per week, you start to build relationship with them, get to know them, you'll have about 500 quality new introductions that you will have had some kind of interaction. Some people are taking these things and putting them on WhatsApp groups where you can chat and the likes. But again, this is small numbers, relational, not social in that everybody, hey, look at me type thing.
Yeah.
And that from that 500 people, where not looking at them as, they might be customers in time, but really looking at them as a dramatic way to increase that first list that we did, the dig your well list, to get people thinking.
Yeah.
But this starts to be, and people, clients of ours, they've got 10 different referral partnerships, because if we dip back into business from years ago, I can remember asking audiences, what was their biggest business audiences, what's their biggest source of business? And almost universally, few exceptions, particularly business to business, referrals was massively as referrals. So then, of course, it leads me into beautifully, nicely playing with them, going, so can you show me your referral generating system then? What? Well, if you get 50% of your business from referrals, you must do some things that are good. Surely you'd put as much money into that as you do advertising in the paper or whatever. No, nobody ever does
Right.
that. So we know there's lots of stats that people can go and check about. Referrals are far more likely to refer as well. They're far more likely to stay with you. They get passed by a know, like, and all that modern day language that we're hearing. So you could end up in different groups that, you know, for some of the people that come to you and are served by you, the coach type fraternities, knowledge provider guys, if they get 7, 8, 9, 10 people who serve similar people but don't compete, and
Yeah.
create that as a little referral partnership, I will lay them a friendly challenge. It will be the most profitable thing they do in the next 2-3 years. But they've got to invest. You can't, once you make that planted seed, you've then got to water it and all of those farm analogies to
Yeah.
build those relationships. The value, both in terms of the opening list and also financially, just to bring it back to good old dirty lucre, dirty money. You know, it's a wonderful thing, and it can be used to invest as well. It's just a completely different mind shift, and it's a different starting point that says invest in those relationships. They will pay you back on so many levels and much quicker than we think.
Yeah, and it's an investment of time and energy rather than money.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people that I talk to are looking at either, you know, starting their first business, something they've always wanted to do during this time, but they're going, but I haven't got money for advertising. And you know, one of the things that just popped into my mind when you were talking there was, you know, I went out to in January last year. I went out to San Diego to sit in on a NLP practitioner training with my friend Matt James, and I think there were about 150 people in the room for this training. And it wasn't Matt, one of his other trainers, asked the question, how many people here are here as a result of somebody else telling them they should be here?
Right.
And it was somewhere between 80 and 90% of the people in the room put their hands up. Whereas, you know, a lot of people in our market, you know, the personal development marketplace, the NLP marketplace, are spending an absolute fortune on Facebook advertising, as an example. But, you know, 150 people in the room where 90% of them are there because somebody else told them to be there, that's
the open secret, Dave. That's the bit when people said referral and they go, so show me the system. And that's where this whole new trend is waking people up now to properly managed presences on LinkedIn. But you've got to put the time in, properly set up referral partnerships, costing you nothing, can be worth fortunes on several levels. But you've got to be willing to plant the seed first, develop the list.
So, you know, there's a, you know, there's another nice little business excuse blown out of the window, which is, well, I'd like to launch my own business, but I can't afford it. I haven't got any money. Well, fine, maybe you haven't got any money because, you know, the money's not coming in for whatever reason because of the situation we're in, and you have got time though.
Right.
So invest the time now, and it will become money later. The other thing I think, you know, we've been talking about the non-linearity of things. When you provide value to one person, the value doesn't necessarily come back from the person that you delivered the value to.
Yeah, almost invariably doesn't.
You know, it's like, you know, in the linear world of Newtonian physics, you know, I throw a tennis ball out of the wall over there, and it will come back from that wall over there. But in the non-linear world that we live in, you know, you throw a tennis ball out over there, and can come and smack in the back of the head.
Yeah.
You go, where did that come from?
Yeah.
But that's the whole thing about putting the stuff out, and then, but also I think letting go of not only where the return comes from, but not having an expectation of a return.
Right.
You know, because the linear thing is like, I'm going to put this in this energy into this person to get this energy back from that person. It doesn't work that way. You might never get the energy back from that person.
Absolutely.
But
Hundreds of examples of that, you know, when I first met Ted Nicholas, one of the ultimate direct marketing gurus, and I think we tracked that we were about 10 levels of connection away from him, and we tracked it back to the little free business opportunity scam letter things that we used to get years ago, and everybody just used to throw them in the bin, and I just built it into a little bit of a database. I thought must be some nice people in these things, and started to mail it out. I sold hundreds of Tony Robbins tickets to those people in the day of literally when we did all that in 90, I think the first tour was 93, but we also met Ted Nicholas. I got invited to this direct marketing media guru. I wasn't a direct marketing guru, and I didn't meet Ted Nicholas that day either, but I did follow everybody up who was there and say, hello, I enjoyed lunch. He wrote back and said, I really enjoyed meeting you, and never met him. We ended up working with Ted for 2 years, being introduced to all kinds of people, just by, if you like, putting him on the list in today's context. Yeah. Just that one little thing.
Yep. Which, you know, in a previous live, I talked about the domino effect.
Right.
You know, the fact that a domino has the ability to knock over a domino which is 50% bigger than itself.
Right.
The video of it, and there's a great video. I'll send you the link for it if you haven't seen it. There's this, I think he's a physicist, and he starts out with a domino which is like 5 millimeters high and 1 millimeter thick. He's got 13 dominoes, each one of them being 50% bigger than the previous one. And the 13th domino is 1 meter high and weighs 100 pounds. And he lines them up and he flicks the first little tiny domino, 5 millimeters, 1 millimeter thick, and he goes, and finally the 13th one goes like, boom. All because of that little tiny thing. I didn't realize that is the real domino effect. Not the one where you just
actually that there's a scale up,
exponential.
Oh wow.
Yeah, nice. I'll send you the link.
I shall use that, Mr. Shepherd. I like that one. In the great story swapping world, I like that one.
Yeah, I'll put it in the comments to here as well. That a number of people particularly people on LinkedIn love that because they've never seen it before. But you know, you might be going, well, I haven't got much money, but I've got time, but it's only small, but you don't know where it's gonna magnify. So you know, whatever you do, just do something. I think that's the, you know, connect with somebody. That's the real, as you say, the open secret.
Absolutely.
Brilliant, Mark. Thank you so much for being here with me on this live. I know, and again, I'm going to link Mark into the post. So if you've got any questions for Mark specifically, then just tag him into it. He'll get those, and I know he'll be He's already told you he will reply, right? Practices what he preaches. So you know, thank you again for joining us. Give us thumbs up, comments in the thread, and you know, wherever you are in the world, love you lots. And until we meet again, hui ho.
Lovely to see you. Thank you, everybody.